The Where Our Minds Wander podcast may contain sensitive content and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Greetings, fellow wanderers, to the places our minds wander.
The house at the end of the dirt road, where disembodied voices whisper and strange sounds make the living shiver.
Where shadows lurk at the edge of the woods, just outside your back door. And mysterious lights speed beyond reason across the clear night sky.
Odd events throughout time that lead you down the rabbit hole.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Beth.
And this is Where Our Minds Wander. Hello and welcome to Where Our Minds Wander, all you fellow wanderers. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone.
I found something interesting the other day while I was doing some research for upcoming episodes, and I just had to share it with everyone because I know it's something that we probably all think about from time to time. According to OddityCentral.com, a Chinese man who felt something crawling up his nose one night experienced particularly bad breath for 3 days before discovering he had a cockroach stuck in his trachea.
Oh my gosh.
A 58-year-old man in Haikou, China's Henan province, recently experienced an entomophobe's worst nightmare. One night as he was sleeping, he woke up with a strange sensation that something was crawling up his nose. Then he felt something go down his throat. So he started coughing, but nothing came out, so he just went back to sleep. The following day, he put the whole incident to the back of his mind and just went about his business until he realized he had particularly bad breath. Even after 3 days, his breath still smelled disgusting, and he also started coughing up yellow phlegm, so he decided to seek some medical help. The unnamed man first went to an ENT specialist at Henan Hospital, but an examination of the upper respiratory tract found nothing suspicious. However, the patient was convinced that there was something wrong, so he was deferred to Dr. Lin Ling, a respiratory and critical care physician at the hospital. He conducted a chest CT scan and found a shadow in the posterior basal segment of the right lower lobe, which indicated that a foreign object had become stuck there. The recommended course of action was a minimally invasive bronchoscopy. During the procedure, I clearly saw something with wings in the bronchus, said Dr. Ling. The foreign body was wrapped in a lot of phlegm. After sucking out the surrounding phlegm, the foreign body was exposed. It was a cockroach. After removing the bug from the man's trachea, the area was repeatedly washed and cleaned of phlegm. So the bad smell emanating from it disappeared completely shortly after. The 58-year-old man made a full recovery and was discharged the next day. Dr. Ling said that such bizarre cases are very rare, but advised anyone with reasons to believe that they have a foreign body stuck in their lower respiratory tract to seek medical attention as soon as possible.
Jeez.
I know, isn't that disgusting? You know, you ever think about that before you go to bed?
No, thank you.
You don't?
No.
That something might crawl in some hole you don't want it to?
I want to put my fingers in my ears and go blah, 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 blah.
Well, I don't think that'll help you when you're sleeping. Perhaps some cotton balls in your ears. Then that's just your ears.
Thank you, honey.
I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Perhaps we'll talk about it before bed tonight.
Awesome. You're so sweet.
I know. So, would you like to tell all our listeners where your mind wandered for this episode?
Well, I might as well, since I won't be sleeping.
Well, you'll have plenty of time to do some research, won't you?
Merrehope Mansion in Meridian, Mississippi looks like a frosted wedding cake. With its completely white exterior, 6 columns, and second-story balcony, it could be a smaller and somewhat altered version of the White House. In one picture online, with its first-story windows decorated with bright green wreaths and the perfectly manicured bushes leading up to the stone walkway dusted with snow, It also brings to mind every Currier and Ives Christmas-themed print that I've ever seen. It doesn't look haunted at all. Inside, the 26-room mansion has cheerfully painted accent walls, white arches, and gleaming wood floors. The sunlight filtering through the many windows just helps to make the home look warm and inviting. You could walk in, look around, and say, "There's no ghosts here." Except Merrehope Mansion is reportedly one of the most haunted houses in all of Mississippi. It makes sense since Meridian was essentially burnt to the ground during the Civil War, and Merrehope Mansion was in the center of it all. However, the two ghosts that are believed to actively haunt the mansion aren't from the Civil War era. So, tonight, I'm going to share the history and haunting of Merrehope. Originally, what is now Meridian was inhabited by the Choctaw Indians until 1831, when the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek was signed. The first white settler in the area was a man named Richard McLemore, who came from Virginia in 1833. McLemore enticed other settlers to come to the area by offering them free land. He himself owned 700 acres, and in 1858 he gave 160 of those acres to his daughter Jeriah as a wedding present. She and her husband, W.H. Jackson, built a small Greek Revival cottage with just 3 rooms. In 1863, they sold the house to General Joseph E. Johnson, who added on to the structure. But a year later, in 1864, the home was taken over by Confederate General Leonidas Polk, a relative of President James K. Polk. Leonidas Polk had been a bishop in the Episcopal Diocese of Louisiana, and he founded the Protestant Episcopal Church in the Confederate States of America before joining the military. Nicknamed the Fighting Bishop, he quickly rose to the rank of Major General because Confederate President Jefferson Davis really liked him, even though he had no combat experience at all prior to the Civil War. Regardless, he led his troops in the battles of Shiloh, Perryville, Stones River, and Chickamauga. When General Johnson was given the command of the Army of Tennessee, Polk became the commander of Mississippi, and he decided that the cottage in Meridian was the perfect spot to hunker down and turn into his center of command. When Union Army General William Tecumseh Sherman arrived in February of 1864, the raid of Meridian began. The Confederate Army was no match for the Union, and before long, Merrehope Mansion, which was still only a cottage, became a shelter for Union officers. Now, just to give you some idea of the destruction Sherman's troops caused the city of Meridian, 115 miles of railroad, 61 bridges, nearly 2,000 miles of train track, 20 locomotives, and 3 sawmills were left completely destroyed. Sherman famously said, quote, "Meridian, with its depots, storehouses, arsenal, hospitals, offices, hotels, and cantonments, no longer exists," end quote. The cottage was only one of 6 homes to survive Sherman's raid. After the war, the home was bought by John H. Gary, a cotton broker, and his wife, Eliza Gary. They added a little more to the original structure, according to the official Merrehope Mansion website. They added a double parlor, a library, and 4 rooms upstairs. They also added ruby-etched glass around the front door. By 1881, it had sold again, this time to a man named J.C. Lloyd. He lived there with his wife and their 13 children. Lloyd lost an arm during the Civil War, and while he lived in the house, He owned a jewelry store and helped create the very first school system in Lauderdale County. He also served as Meridian city clerk. Between 1899 and 1903, the house changed ownership 3 more times before it was purchased by S.H. Floyd in 1904. Floyd was also a cotton broker. The Floyds remodeled the cottage into the academic revival-style mansion that it is today. He moved part of the original home back 20 feet and added the second story, where there was a servant's quarters, several bathrooms, a bedroom suite, and 2 additional bedrooms. On the first floor, he added a dining room, a guest room, and a bathroom. He also put in electricity. A portico was added to the exterior of the building, so that's when the 6 massive white columns were installed. What became of the Floyds is hard to say, although they did celebrate the birth of a child in 1913. Beginning in 1915, the house was divided up into a boarding house, which it remained until 1945, when Otto Tibbets bought it and divided it up again, this time into 8 separate apartments. It remained an apartment building until the 1960s. According to southernspiritguide.org, at some point between 1915 and 1945, the first rumored tragedy happened inside the house. Allegedly, there was a school teacher who rented one of the rooms, who had problems with both gambling and alcohol addiction. The story goes that one night, he lined the fireplace mantel in his room with empty whiskey bottles. He took out his gun and shot at each and every bottle, shattering them one by one. Then he turned the gun on himself. Now, honestly, there was no way for me to verify this story because I couldn't find a full name or a date to go by. So 1 or 2 of the articles did supply a first name. They said he was named Marcus. But with just that to go on, I wasn't able to verify that it actually happened. Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen, just that I couldn't find anything to back it up. However, if any of you listening have been to Merrehope Mansion or you know more about it, just let us know. Drop us an email or something. So, currently, the Merrehope Mansion is owned by the Meridian Restoration Foundation. They were the ones who named it Merrehope by combining the words Meridian, restoration, and hope. After purchasing the home in 1968, they worked tirelessly to restore it back to its former glory, from the days when S.H. Floyd and his family lived there. In 1971, it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and in 1995, it was awarded Mississippi Landmark status. So, with the home's 166-year history, including the Civil War years, you'd think Merrehope Mansion could be haunted, and it is, but not by the type of ghosts you'd expect. There aren't Civil War soldiers still walking the halls, or ladies in white peering over the balcony. The 2 spirits who do reside there are said to be of a young girl and a young man. According to the Meridian Star, the young girl who visitors claim to see is Eugenia Gary, the teenage daughter of John Gary, the cotton broker who owned the house for the 2 decades after the Civil War. Eugenia passed away from consumption, but here's the strange part. She never actually lived at Merrehope. She passed away in Alabama before her family even moved to Mississippi. Some volunteers at the mansion believe Eugenia's spirit came with her in her portrait, which hangs on the wall in the house. A 2007 Meridian Star article featured Donna White, a hostess at the mansion, who was also a descendant of John Gary. She explained in the article that it was another former hostess who pointed out that the apparition she'd seen looked a lot like Eugenia. Her apparition is often seen staring out of windows, especially in the downstairs library. But she's also been seen wandering through the kitchen by people who are outside the mansion and happen to look in and see her walking through the room. She's also been spotted walking through the closed front door and standing at the bottom of the stairs. But Eugenia's not your typical lady in white. According to southernspiritguide.org, she's actually seen in a green dress. The top half of her dress is solid green, while her hoop skirt is green plaid. Often, people only hear the sound of a hoop skirt rustling as she walks by unseen, or they smell an overwhelming scent of rosewater. But Eugenia also showed up in one compelling photograph, according to Donna White from the Meridian Star article. One day during the winter season, a group of senior citizens were touring the museum. The Christmas trees in the double parlor were a popular spot for taking pictures. And later, when they looked at one of the photos, they could see a young woman standing next to the trees. Eugenia, if that's who the spirit really is considered a calm and reassuring presence in the mansion. Most staff see her as a comforting spirit and are totally okay with her being there. The spirit that is said to haunt the periwinkle room, though, is a different story. Painted a bright periwinkle blue, the periwinkle room contains a bed and dresser as well as some other antiques. So it's definitely unnerving when staff at the mansion hear loud crashes from the room as if glass is shattering. They attribute the haunting to the unnamed school teacher who took his own life. Donna White described an unsettling encounter she had with the unnamed man in the Meridian Star article. After working at the mansion for only a few weeks, she had set a routine for herself. Each morning, she'd methodically check each room. One morning, when she stepped into the periwinkle room, her gaze immediately fell on the bed, where it looked as though a person had been laying there on top of the covers. There was a perfect imprint of a body. Thinking an intruder had broken in during the night and had slept in the room, she rushed out of the house and called one of the other hostesses. The other woman assured her that there wasn't any intruder. It was just the spirit of the unnamed man playing a trick on her. Then the other hostess asked White if she was going to quit, because most of the hostesses did quit after encountering the unnamed man. Many of the staff have heard the sound of glass shattering in that bedroom, and when they rushed to the room to investigate, certain that something would be broken on the floor, there's never any sign of any broken glass. Interestingly, during the interview with White, the Meridian Star reporter, who was named Jennifer Jacob, recorded White as she took them around the mansion, sharing her stories. Later, when the reporter listened to the audio, a, quote, ghastly, inhuman screech could be heard while they were talking. Although the unnamed man is sometimes described as playful and full of mischief, others describe feeling a sense of uneasiness while in the periwinkle room. One guest even reported feeling as if someone had punched him in the stomach. But don't let the two ghosts at Merrehope Mansion, or the alleged ghost cat, who I didn't really talk about, keep you from visiting the beautiful historic home. Although they don't advertise their haunted halls by offering ghost tours of any kind, they do open their doors for all kinds of weddings, parties, dinner banquets, and other events, especially at Christmas time. You can also go on a traditional tour during regular business hours. But if you see any of the staff members in Victorian-era costumes, just be aware, the staff there don't dress in costumes, so you might have just seen Eugenia.
So why didn't you mention the cat?
I don't know. I mean, I saw that there was a ghost cat, but all of the articles that I looked at didn't really expound on it. They didn't really say much about it other than that there's a ghost cat. Does that answer your question?
Okay, that makes sense to me because we've had that happen before with places. They mention an animal, but they don't really go into particulars about it.
Right. Or the opposite, like the Tilly Pierce, where everybody talked about the ghost cat, and then what we heard was not a cat.
No, not at all. And they had a little basket of toys out there so you could, try to get the ghost cat to play with you a bit.
Right.
We never did that.
We didn't do that. We didn't need to. We heard footsteps walking across the floor in the middle of the night instead.
Yeah, right in front of our bed.
Human ones, not cat ones.
No. It was quite interesting.
All right, we'll be right back after this quick break. Hey, did you know? When Polish soldiers entered Syria in 1944, they met Wojciech, an orphaned brown bear cub. They essentially adopted the bear, feeding him condensed milk from a vodka bottle. They also fed him honey, fruit, marmalade, and his favorite beverage, a morning coffee. Wojciech was loved by everyone, as he often huddled next to cold soldiers on chilly evenings to keep them warm. He would carefully wrestle with them and mimicked them by standing on his hind legs and saluting with his front paw. When possible, he shared a tent with his human comrades. Unwilling to leave him in Syria, the soldiers built a wooden crate for him and brought him by truck to their post in Palestine and then Egypt. To ensure his daily rations, the Polish army officially enlisted the bear, which meant he held the rank of private. When Wojciech and the soldiers participated in the Battle of Monte Cassino in Italy, the bear helped carry several ammunition crates, even loading them onto trucks himself to be brought to the front lines, earning him the rank of corporal. When the war ended, Wojciech traveled with his company to Winfield Airfield in Scotland, where he enjoyed a sort of celebrity status. Wanting to ensure that their faithful friend remained safe and comfortable for the rest of his life, the soldiers agreed that Wojciech should be allowed to live at the Edinburgh Zoo, which he did until 1963, when he passed away at the age of 21. Who'da thunk it?
All right, we're back.
If you get a chance, you should check out the pictures of Wojciech the bear online. It's spelled Wotjek, I believe. But they're pretty fascinating because there's all these soldiers standing around and the bear's just hanging out like he's one of the crew.
Yeah, I know. I've seen it.
It's really cool.
Yeah, our listeners need to check it out.
So, what are you talking about tonight?
Well, the terrifying creature I'm talking about tonight is said to roam the swamps and bayous of Louisiana, instilling fear in those who hear its name. So, let's dive into the mysteries of the bayou as we uncover the spine-chilling legends of the Rougarou. The Rougarou, which is a terrifying werewolf creature, has existed in Louisiana folklore for centuries. Specific to Louisiana culture, the legends blend both French and Native American stories that serve as a cautionary tale about both cultures' deep fear of the murky, dark swamps. In the French-based legends, the werewolf is called the loup-garou, combining the French word loup for wolf and garou, which means werewolf. When the French colonists first came to the New World, they brought the legend of the loup-garou with them, a terrifying beast that really liked the swamps of their new home in Louisiana. These legends were quickly mixed with the other existing cultures, pulling in bits of Spanish, African, and Caribbean folklore. The Cajun people told stories about the Rougarou as a way to encourage people to follow moral codes, both religious and societal. People often shared their Rougarou encounters. Frequently, these encounters happened late at night, as people traveled through the swamps. They'd tell tales about a monstrous creature that walked like a man on 2 feet, but had the head of a dog with red gleaming eyes. Even the bravest of men feared the werewolf-like creature. So, what exactly does a Rougarou do? Well, that depends on the story. But essentially, it is like a werewolf-like creature that prowls the swamps and bayous, feeding on both aquatic animals and small mammals. Locals would find both half-eaten fish and amphibians that were torn apart washing up on the shores, both things that a Rougarou loves to eat. A Rougarou might stand on the edge of the swamp and merely reach out into the murky water to grab a catfish or bullfrog and devour it whole. If those can't be found, a Rougarou will also hunt raccoons and possums. Occasionally, though, if they are hungry enough, and they are always hungry, they might even feast on birds. If a once active swamp full of croaking bullfrogs and splashing fish is suddenly silent, it could mean that a Rougarou has just filled its belly with anything that it could get its hands on. Some Rougarou legends say that they drink the blood of their victims, and sometimes their victim might be a human. A Rougarou is said to be stealthy. It is part wolf after all, so if you hear unexplained rustling in the bushes or splashing water, there might be one nearby. Often, the only thing that might give a Rougarou's hiding spot away is heavy breathing and the chilling sound of its jaw snapping. Imagine being alone in the swamp and feeling as though you are being followed. As you pause to listen, you hear the terrible, horrible sound of very strong jaw snapping over and over. Maybe it's accompanied by the sound of crunching bones.
I wouldn't want that.
But what's even worse is when a Rougarou's chilling, eerie howl pierces the night air. Starting off as a low, guttural growl at first, its cries rise into a piercing wail. If you're unlucky enough to hear these howls, watch out, because a Rougarou is nearby and ready to attack. If that isn't terrifying enough, the legend says that a silent Rougarou is even worse. Because they are a werewolf, they are able to blend into the swamp environment to the point that you don't have any idea that there is one nearby until it's too late. One specific legend about the Rougarou goes like this. Once a bold young man defied the village warnings and ventured into the forbidden swampland. Armed with only his trusty rifle, he sought to debunk the deeply rooted village superstition. According to the legend, the hunter never returned, leaving behind his abandoned rifle near the swamp's edge. Another well-known story is about a woman who enjoyed walking in the swamp alone at night. She ran into the Rougarou often, describing how the creature towered over her with its glowing red eyes. Its howl was enough to chill her to the bone. But there's also the legend of the carnival show. Many years ago, a traveling carnival came through Louisiana with a caged Rougarou. People for miles around claimed to have seen the creature transform from man to beast right before their eyes. But if a Rougarou is a werewolf, then it must have transformed from a man. So, how does a man or woman become a Rougarou? Most transformation stories begin with a curse, although what causes the curse depends on the cultural origin of the particular story. For example, the curse might be caused by someone breaking Lent for 7 years in a row. For those of you who might be unfamiliar with Lent is a 40-day session of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving right before Easter. It begins on Ash Wednesday and ends at sundown on Holy Thursday. During Lent, many Catholics abstain from eating meat on Fridays, and they also give up a specific luxury for the full 40 days. If the Lent breaker encounters a Rougarou, in some cases, all a Rougarou has to do is make eye contact with the person and the curse will begin. However, many legends say that the creature has to bite them or cause them to bleed in some kind of way. If that happens, the Rougarou is released from its own curse and turns permanently back into a human. But the person who is bitten, well, they take on the Rougarou transformation for 101 days, doomed to scour the swamps for food. They cannot tell anybody about what happened for exactly 366 days. This goes for anyone who thinks they've encountered a Rougarou, whether they have been bitten or not. If they do, it can pass the curse on to others, or it can make your own curse start over from the beginning, prolonging your personal suffering as a werewolf. Even though the new Rougarou is still human during the day, there's nothing they can do to stop the transformation until either the 101 days are over or they find someone else worthy of a bite. Or they could try using certain religious items, rituals or prayers to shorten the curse. So technically, a person could be a Rougarou indefinitely. Luckily, there are plenty of ways to ensure that you don't run into a Rougarou. The most obvious being, stay out of the swamps at night. But there are other things that you can do. First, if you suspect someone of being a Rougarou, you can always place 13 objects in the person's path. Beans are the most common object used. Rougarous love to count things, except they're only able to count up to 12, so they become confused and have to start all over again, recounting and recounting. Because they are so hopelessly addicted to counting, they can spend hours at it, losing track of time until the sun comes up. As soon as the sun rises, they transform back into their human form, which could save you from an attack.
That sounds an awful lot like the boo hag.
Yeah, it really does sound a lot like the boo hag. And they do the same thing with salt. So if you make a line of salt around your home, the Rougarou will be forced to count every single grain, always starting over at 12. So again, dawn will surely come before the Rougarou can finish counting. If you want to be even more proactive, you can conduct certain rituals on holy days, like Easter. Prayer circles are also effective, as well as burning Rougarou, a plant that is believed to repel the beast. It sounds like a kid's TV show, Rougarou. Oh, I know what it reminds me. Zaboomafoo.
Oh.
Wow, that just popped in my head.
I used to love that show.
I used to watch it with the girls all the time when they were little. Okay, back to our story. You can also wear reflective glasses, so that if you face a Rougarou, they won't be able to look into your eyes. Or you can carry a shiny object with you at all times. You can use it to reflect the Rougarou's gaze back at it and save yourself. The Rougarou sounds pretty terrifying. Who would want to be cursed to transform into a werewolf for 100 days, completely caught in the cycle for 101 days? But luckily enough, it's just a legend. Or is it? Over the years, people in Louisiana have reported seeing the Rougarou regularly. Or at least they're seeing some sort of creature that appears half human, half wolf, with glowing red eyes, sharp teeth, and long claws. Most sightings happen in the swampy areas away from the city, but stories also come from the suburban areas. These reports tend to increase during the humid summer and after thunderstorms, when frogs are croaking and nocturnal animals are active. One modern-day sighting happened in 1996 in St. Martin Parish. Known as the Cypress Island Loop, locals heard wolf-like howls. Ranchers reported livestock attacks, and some encountered a humanoid beast. This event attracted a lot of attention, but no definitive conclusion was ever reached. Recently, there have been reports of tall wolf-like creatures in Manchac and Atchafalaya swamps. These beings quickly disappear into the swamp when approached. Despite no solid evidence, the consistent witness accounts paint a spooky picture of what might be in the Louisiana swamps. Now, I wasn't able to find much for detailed sightings or encounters with the Rougarou. But here are a few first-hand encounters that I could find. In August of 2020, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a couple out for a walk at night described seeing a monstrous figure lurking behind the trees. In another case, in Lafayette, in December of 2020, a jogger had a near-miss encounter with a massive beast during an early morning run. In October of 2021, in Thibodaux, a tourist heard strange growling and splashing late at night. Then in April of that year, a fisherman in Napoleonville saw a mysterious figure around the swamp area. As recently as January of 2022, a resident of Houma saw a large wolf-like creature near the swamp at dusk. But the most detailed first-hand sighting that I could find came from a Reddit user named r/cryptids approximately 3 years ago. He posted the following: "My encounter with a Rougarou, also known as the Louisiana werewolf." He said, quote, "So this happened to me a few years ago. I was visiting a friend's house in the Houston River area. That section of the river is pretty swampy, so we were frog hunting at night. It was a full moon, so it made spotting the bullfrogs easier. Super tasty, by the way. Anyway, we were wandering down by the riverbank when we heard sound. All went quiet. Not even the crickets chirped. We heard dozens of frogs dive into the water. We knew then something was very wrong. Then came a distant growl, like something evil, from the other side of the river. We killed our Q-beams, spotlight, and watched in the direction of the sound. What I saw chilled me to the bone. It was a massive wolf with patchy black fur, yet no visible skin on its head, only a skull with empty eyes. It appeared to be locked onto other prey, so we shut our lights off and watched for a moment. Looking back, it was really stupid not to flee right then. It ran back into the woods and started running down the river. We decided to dip out and get as far away as possible." End quote. Despite the fear that the Rougarou evokes, the communities of Louisiana have found a way to embrace and even appreciate this menacing folklore. Festivals centered around the creature serve as a testament to their acceptance and resilience in turning something terrifying into a source of intrigue and unity. Houma, Louisiana holds an annual Rougarou Fest in October. With the chilling whispers of All Hallows Eve in the air, the festival embraces October's association with thrills, spooky characters, and of course, the Rougarou. More than just a festive gathering, it is a culturally immersive experience featuring music, food, costumes, and a parade paying homage to the Cajun legend. The event revolves around the tales of the Rougarou, with attendees often dressing up as the creature or other supernatural figures from the region's folklore, transforming it from a tale of terror into a fun cultural celebration. Part of the festival includes the Rougarou Ball, a masquerade event that also celebrates the lore. Participants wear costumes and masks and dance under the stars. The Rougarou Queen, who traditionally was crowned at the ball, oversees the yearly parade as well as other community events tied to the Rougarou legend. All in all, the Rougarou legend combines pieces of folklore, cultural history, and local superstitions as a way of reminding or even warning people about the mysteries and dangers that can hide in the Louisiana swamps. The stories are meant to entertain, but also educate. They offer a glimpse into Louisiana's communities, values and beliefs and fears. Perhaps we'll never prove whether the Rougarou really exist or not, but the legends continue to be passed down from generation to generation, sparking curiosity and a connection to the past. In the end, whether as a cautionary tale or a source of fascination, the Rougarou tends to echo through the swamps, a testament to the power of storytelling and the captivating lore that defines a place and its people.
That's interesting. I didn't know very much about the Rougarou, and now I feel like I do, and I'm intrigued. I'm interested.
Well, I've heard quite a bit about the Rougarou, but I did learn some new things while researching this.
I do think it's interesting that some of the folklore about it is identical to the boo hag, that they have to count things. Like, that's really interesting.
Right, it's pretty close. And if you haven't listened to our boo hag episode, you should really check it out. I can't remember what episode it is, but...
Is it Who's Your Boo Daddy? Is that the name of it?
I believe it is.
It's early on. It's probably within the first 10 episodes.
And that was probably one of my favorite episodes of all time that we've ever done.
Yeah. This one's pretty good, though. I want to know more about the Rougarou. I'm going to start looking up some things.
Right. Well, like I said before, you think you know it all about this one specific cryptid or whatever. And then you start researching, and it's like, wow, I've never heard this before.
Mm-hmm.
So, a little goes a long way in researching.
Yeah. And it's interesting, too, that, you've got the Dog Man of Michigan. You've got the Rougarou of Louisiana. It's so interesting to me that all these cryptids are showing up in slightly different forms all over the country.
Right. Well, you want to tell everybody about our show notes?
Yeah, if we sparked your interest too, which we hope we did, you can always check our sources in our show notes to find out more.
And with that said, join us next week for an all new episode of Where Minds Wander.
See you soon.